Today we're going to be working on our story elements, which is just a fancy way to put things that happen in our stories, or the pieces that make up our story. Remember, all good readers think about what they're reading, so we can look back and we can think about the beginning, the middle, or the end, or maybe we can think and make some connections about what we're reading, or maybe we can even go back and tell about the characters, the setting, or things that happen in the story. So before we get started, we're going to look over here, just looking at this little diagram of what story elements could be. So remember, story elements are kind of like pieces of the puzzle or pieces of the book. So we have our characters, or the people or animals who make up the story. We have our setting, which is the time and location or where the story takes place. Usually in a story we have our problem, which is then solved by a solution. So our problem is what went wrong, or maybe something that bothered the characters. Then our solution is the way that the characters solve the problem. Then lastly, good readers think about what they're reading, so we can go back and we can think about the key events or the important parts of the story that really stick out to us. So today we're going to be reading Ricky the Rock That Couldn't Roll, and we're going to be thinking about those story elements, our characters, our setting, our problem, our solution, our main events. So, looking at the cover, I see some rocks with faces. So first graders, we know these rocks are fake, so this must be give me a thumbs up for fiction, a thumbs down for non-fiction. Fiction, yes. Rocks can't have faces. They can't frown. It's fake. It's fiction. Ricky the Rock That Couldn't Roll, written by J. Miletsky, illustrated by Aaron Wozniak. Over the lake and out past the bay was a green grassy hill where the rocks came to play. They would race to the top to take in the view, then roll their way down. The rocks would love to do. There was Kip, Pip, and Chester, and Marvin the Boulder. Ignatius played too, though he was much older. And a group called the Pebbles never ever sat still, zigzagging their way up and over the hill. Kai was a meteorite and not from this planet, and Maya was lava, but taken for granite. Stu was the smart one, Parker the clown, and grumpy old Ebert rolled round with a frown. Gabby was sassy, Leslie had flair, Emma was giggly, and Hud had black hair. But the one trait that seemed to be shared by them all was that every rock there was shaped like a ball. And because they were round, they could easily roll through the grass, past the lake, up and over the knoll. Except for poor Ricky, who quietly sat. You see, Ricky couldn't roll because one side was flat. His friends didn't get it. "Come roll," they would chant. So Ricky tried, but replied, "I'm sorry, I can't." So let's stop for a second and think about our story elements. Go ahead and tell someone at home a character that you remembered. We have a few characters, but I think there might be one main character whose name starts with R. I think the main character is Ricky, our flatter rock. And then one more thing before we move on. Do we think there might be a problem already? What do we think the problem might be? Go ahead, tell someone what you think the problem might be. Take a look at this page. How's Ricky feeling? Might be that Ricky's feeling left out and sad because he can't roll like his friends. Go ahead. Is there a time that you ever felt sad or left out? Maybe at school, maybe at home? Tell someone at home about that time that you felt like Ricky. What's your connection? Good job. But the rocks were determined. They were sure they could solve Ricky's flat-sided problem and help him revolve. So Marvin the Boulder, with his impressive physique, carried Rick all the way to the hill's grassy peak. Then he pushed him downhill, yelling, "Keep rolling, kid!" But Rick didn't roll. He just kind of slid. This feels like a bad idea. Well, the rocks weren't done, not by a mile. Surely the next try would get Rick to smile. They stuck rubber balls all over Rick, using big guns to stick. They were proud of themselves. "This will work," they announced. But Rick still didn't roll. Now he just sort of bounced. So is there still a problem going on, you think? Is Ricky rolling yet? Well, they pushed and they pulled, trying every which way to get Rick to roll, but at the end of the day, nothing had worked, just like Rick expected. And he ended up feeling depressed and dejected. "It's no use," Ricky sighed. "There just isn't a way, so I'll just sit off to the side and watch you all play." So let's pause here for one more second. Let's look back to our story elements. Think again. What do you think the problem is? Is the problem still there? What's the main issue? That's right, that Ricky can't roll, even though his friends tried. Let's go to our character. I think our main character, who the story is mostly about, is our friend. And then we have some other characters. Remember, good readers always look back in their stories. We have our friends, right? We had our friends who helped Ricky. We had Marvin the Boulder. We had all his other friends, the Pebbles, that are helping him feel better and trying to get him to roll, right? All right. We're going to keep going and think about our story elements. Hopefully we have a solution, a way to solve the problem. But his friends wouldn't quit. "We're here for you, brother, and we'll get you to roll one way or another." So they pondered and thought, each straining his brain, till they looked up and saw it was starting to rain. And that's when it hit the smart stone named Stu. "Eureka!" he shouted. "I know just what to do." He explained to them how they would get Rick to tumble. "My plan is pure genius." Stu wasn't too humble. So they carried our hero down the road, about a mile, to the lake where they gathered up mud that could pile on the flat side of Rick, creating a mound that they shaped smooth and sculpted until it was round. Then, after their rain with the sun in the sky, they left him to bake till the mud was all dry. They gathered up vines and one colorful feather that they wrapped all around Rick to keep it together. So we might be coming to our solution, the answer to our problem of Rick not rolling. When the last knot was tied and the work was done, the only step left was for Rick to have fun. As Rick breathed in deep with increasing suspense, he moved slowly at first, testing out his new mold. And then, for the first time, Ricky the Rock rolled. And how does he look? He looks happy. So Bria, the ladybug, who had been there from the start, felt a surge of pure joy swell up in her heart. She thought, as she watched her friends play in the hill, that there's always a way if there's always a will. And she said to herself as Ricky rolled down the slope, "When you're surrounded by love, you always have hope." Wow, that was a great ending, and I think our problem was solved. Go ahead and tell somebody in your house how the problem was solved. Remember, we said that we thought the problem was that our friend Ricky couldn't roll. Go ahead and think back. Miss Fester will look back for you. How was our problem solved? What did Ricky's friends help him do? They helped him become circular when they caked the mud on his flat side to help him roll down the hill. Great job! So, the last thing we'd like to talk about before we get going is our key events. So in our story, and in most stories, we have important things that stick out. So let's try to think of 3 important things that happened in our story, Ricky the Rock That Couldn't Roll. I'll give you a minute to think about your 3 important things. All right, I think one important thing was that Ricky had a lot of friends who were around him. He had his pebbles, he had the big boulder, he had all these friends that were there to help him in the beginning, the middle, and the end of the story. And they all helped him get to rolling, right? There's one important thing I think that happened. Another important thing I think that happened in our story is that our little ladybug friend said some important words on the last page. She said, when you're surrounded by love, you always have hope. And I think that was super important because I think that relates to us a little bit. All of us feel down sometimes. But when you're surrounded by people you love, like your brothers and sisters at home or your mom and dad, your problems can always be fixed, or you can always ask for help. And then I think maybe the last important thing is that Ricky never gave up. He used his star quality of perseverance. In the beginning, he was a little sad about not being able to roll, and then he persevered, and he got to roll down the hill with his friends and be happy. So there are 3 important things I think happened in our story, Ricky the Rock That Couldn't Roll. Alright guys, so there was our little mini lesson on story elements. The last thing I want to share with you before we go is I have my own Ricky the Rock. He did have 2 eyes, and now he has 1 because 1 fell off. But here's my Ricky the Rock. Maybe when you're at home, you can make your own Ricky the Rock and see what he can do. Alright, bye guys.